Welcome back, everybody, to Let's Talk About Sleep. Here's our book. You can get that on the Amazon link in the description box down below. Number 2 is on its way. Just put the acknowledgement section in, so it's coming along. So keep an eye out for that. As we get closer to 1,000 subscribers, one lucky viewer at random will get a signed copy of this one, Let's Talk About Sleep. We gotta be in it to win it, so make sure you subscribe. Please like this channel. Please subscribe. Please share with your friends and family. And as I always say, these videos are for education only. Okay. So every now and then I like to talk about interesting studies that I find as I do my reading. And this one is part of that group. So when we talk about disorders of hypersomnolence, that's being excessively sleepy, not fatigue, right? And I've had videos on that. Fatigue is, I just don't feel like I have the energy to do what I want to do, whereas sleepiness is, I'm actually going to fall asleep. The two main ones that are, of major consequence when there's no other reasons for it, like sleep apnea, for example, those are narcolepsy, right? And there's type 1 and type 2. And there's idiopathic hypersomnia, or IH, okay? And idiopathic means we don't know why, right? But these are disorders where the person comes in for an overnight test and a MSLT, which is a nap test, the next day, and objectively we see that they are sleepy. Again, not that they are fatigued, but they're actually sleepy. Okay? So as it is right now, we have very specific definitions of what each of those are based on an overnight sleep test and a nap test. Okay? And we have different criteria for each one, along with their clinical history. Okay? A recent study came out in the Journal of Neurology out of Amsterdam, Gool and colleagues, Gool. Really interesting, looking at trying to find better ways to cluster people who have narcolepsy type 1 versus type 2 versus IH. And basically what they found was, so I don't want to get too technical here, but what happens is if we do a nap test, right, that MSLT, that multiple sleep latency test, for somebody with narcolepsy, we're going to see that they go into REM sleep. Okay, so REM sleep or dream sleep, again, I've had videos on that. We tend to go into that after about 90 minutes or so. So if we have a 20-minute nap, we shouldn't end up in REM sleep. People with narcolepsy, though, their kind of REM sleep is disordered and they kind of go in and out of REM sleep when they shouldn't. So an MSLT, a nap test, is going to show they're sleepy, right, because they're falling asleep very quickly, but their brain goes into REM sleep very, very quickly, okay, which is abnormal. So type 1, type 2 will have that pattern. IH patients, they're not going into REM sleep abnormally, but they're just excessively sleepy, okay? So we have type 1, which narcolepsy type 1, which is basically a loss of orexin, which is a hormone that the brain makes, which basically keeps us awake when we're awake, keeps us asleep when we're asleep. Okay? Those patients also have what's called cataplexy, which is a loss of muscle strength in the context of being, excited or angry. Okay? Narcolepsy type 1, we know that is a loss of orexin, and that's very, very clearly defined. Narcolepsy type 2, though, what happens there is they have the same pattern, like I said, on the nap test and whatnot, but they don't have cataplexy. Okay? And then IH, these patients are very, very sleepy, but they have no issue with REM. They're just falling asleep. Okay? Now, the kind of standard definitions are based on, like we said, the clinical history, the nap test findings. But what these folks found, Gool and colleagues, they looked at, so I'm just going to read the words here. It says, the results of this study show that the current inclusion of sleep onset REM periods, right, so the narcolepsy type 1 and type 2, in diagnostic criteria for people without cataplexy is not justified, and we provide new variables such as sleep drunkenness, subjective difficulty awakening, and week sleep length difference for other or more reliable categories. So basically what they're saying is the current definitions that we use, okay, versus type 2 narcolepsy versus idiopathic hypersomnia, this notion of going into REM sleep may not be completely accurate. And there may be other things that we can look at that kind of help us to really parcel out who has what. Okay? So sleep drunkenness, that's basically sleep inertia, right? That's kind of that feeling that, okay, I've woken up, but I'm still kind of half asleep. Subjective difficulty awakening, that's pretty, self-explanatory. And week sleep length difference, that also is self-explanatory. Basically, these are patients who are sleeping, let's say, 8 hours a night on the weekdays, so they're not technically sleep deprived, but on the weekends they get 10 or 12 or 14 hours of sleep. Okay, so they say that in this study, those are better markers of who has what. Now, why does this matter, right? Is this just, academic talk and this has nothing to do in reality? It does, because as time goes along, right, newer treatments get developed. So in the migraine world, right, there's new treatments that have come out. In the MS world, there are new treatments come out that are more tailored to what the person has. Okay, so for narcolepsy type 1, again, this is a loss of orexin, new medications are being developed right now. Okay, so they're Orexin Agonists. So basically what that means is they work on the orexin system. So the theory is that patients who have narcolepsy type 1, which is a loss of orexin, you give them this medicine, and in essence, the symptoms should go away. Both the disrupted nighttime sleep, the daytime sleepiness, the poor quality sleep, all these things should get better, okay, in theory. All right, so this would be a disease-modifying agent. That's important because that type of medication may not work on narcolepsy type 2. It may not work on IH. It probably won't, okay? But if we have a more defined definition about narcolepsy type 2 and IH and, other subcategories of this, we have more honed in definitions, that will allow us to figure out, okay, what exactly is wrong here, and then medications and other therapies can be more tailored to it, okay? So if you don't have one of these conditions, this kind of talk is probably not going to be of any interest to you. But if you do, you understand that there's still a lot that we don't know about these things, especially narcolepsy type 2 and especially IH, and frankly, kind of fatigue as well. But as we kind of hone in and really figure out, what is going on in each of these conditions, that will allow for kind of more tailored approaches. Okay, so hopefully this talk wasn't super technical. If it was, let me know in the comment section. I'll figure it out somehow. But if it was, click like, subscribe, let me know what you think. Once a month, I answer any and all questions and comments, so feel free to discuss amongst yourselves as well. I want this to be kind of a community. But that's the talk for today. So, in the future, I think, honestly, what's going to happen is, 10, 20 years from now, it's all going to be narcolepsy. But it's going to be narcolepsy type 3, narcolepsy type 4, narcolepsy type 5, and each one of those will have a different issue. Like one may have, something wrong with the histamine system. One may have something wrong with the GABA system. These are all just my own ideas, but we'll see. Until next time, everybody, sleep well.